Have you ever woken up one day and wondered, how did time pass so fast? One moment, you're in the heart of everything, your career, your family, your passions. The next, life seems quieter, slower. People you once held close are now caught up in their own worlds. The recognition, the purpose, the sense of being needed, it all feels like it's slipping away. But here's the truth. Life isn't fading. It's evolving, and whether this new chapter feels empty or empowering, that's up to you. For centuries, Stoic philosophy has helped people find strength in change, peace in uncertainty, and power in silence. And today, I want to share with you 7 life-changing Stoic lessons that can transform the way you see aging, relationships, and your own self-worth. These are not just ideas. They are practical tools that you can use right now to live with more confidence, dignity, and fulfillment. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might just see life and yourself in a whole new light. And if this resonates with you, if you believe in finding wisdom through life's experiences, then consider joining our community. Hit that subscribe button, because here we don't just talk about life, we learn how to live it better together. Now, let's begin. When life isn't what you expected, accept and enjoy the present. John sat on his porch, a warm cup of coffee in hand, staring at the empty street ahead. Retirement wasn't supposed to feel this way. He had spent decades building his career, providing for his family, and making a name for himself. But now the calls from colleagues had stopped. His children were busy with their own lives. The world seemed to have moved on, and he felt forgotten. He found himself dwelling on the past, the missed opportunities, the dreams he had set aside, the moments he wished he could relive. He longed for the days when he was needed, when his presence had purpose beyond the routine of waking up, eating meals, and filling the hours before bedtime. One day, as he flipped through an old book, a quote from Marcus Aurelius caught his eye. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." John closed the book and sighed. Could it really be that simple? Could it be that his suffering wasn't because of his circumstances, but because of the way he was thinking about them? You cannot control the past, only your perspective. One of the most fundamental teachings of Stoicism is that suffering often comes not from our reality, but from our attachment to how we think reality should be. We torment ourselves by clinging to an imagined version of life, one where things are different, where we are younger, where time didn't move so fast. But the past is immovable. It does not bend to our will. And as long as we resist this truth, we will always be at war with life itself. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, faced this reality daily. As Emperor of Rome, he lost friends, endured betrayals, and battled wars. But rather than despair over what he could not change, he trained himself to accept and embrace the present moment as it was, not as he wished it to be. This is where John's story takes a turn. He decided to conduct an experiment. For 1 month, he would stop lamenting the past and focus only on what was in front of him. Each morning, he would ask himself, what can I control today? What is good about my current reality? How can I make today meaningful? The how to find peace in the present. If you find yourself feeling like John, stuck in the past, longing for what once was, here are 3 Stoic principles to help shift your mindset and reclaim joy in the present. 1. Focus on what you can control. Most of our frustration comes from trying to control the uncontrollable, the past, unchangeable, other people's actions, out of your hands. The only thing you have power over is how you respond to life as it is right now. Try this. Each morning, write down 3 things you can control that day. It could be your attitude, your actions, or even something as simple as what you choose to read or watch. Example: instead of thinking, I wish my children visited more, shift to, I can call them today and express my love without expecting anything in return. Unappreciated. Practice negative visualization, premeditation of loss. The Stoics had a powerful exercise called premeditatio malorum, which means imagining loss before it happens. This practice isn't meant to make you sad, it's meant to make you appreciate what you still have. Try this. Before going to bed, imagine your life without one of the things you currently take for granted: your home, your health, a simple meal. Then wake up the next day with renewed gratitude. Example: instead of complaining about aches and pains, recognize that your body still allows you to walk, to see, to hear. Not everyone has that privilege. 3. Find new purpose in small things. One of the biggest struggles in later life is losing a sense of purpose. But purpose does not have to be grand. It can be found in the simplest of actions: mentoring someone, learning something new, or even just tending to a garden. Try this. Identify one thing you can do each day that gives you a sense of contribution. It could be sharing wisdom with a younger person, volunteering, or creating something that brings you joy. Example: instead of thinking, I have nothing important to do anymore, shift to, my presence, my kindness, my experiences are valuable. I will share them in ways that matter. John's transformation, choosing the present. Over the past month after John started his experiment, something remarkable happened. His life felt fuller, not because his circumstances had changed, but because his mindset had. He still missed parts of his past, but he no longer let that longing rob him of his present. He started writing letters to old friends. He took walks in the morning sun, appreciating the simple beauty around him. He even started sharing his life stories with his grandchildren, realizing that his wisdom was a gift that only he could give. Most importantly, he stopped waiting for happiness to come from the outside. He realized that it had always been within his reach. It just required a shift in perspective. Final thought. Life is happening right now. If you've spent too much time looking back, longing for the past, or feeling disconnected from the present, let this be your wake-up call. You're still here, you're still living, and this moment right now is all you truly own. Your challenge for today: choose one thing from this lesson to apply right now. Will you shift your focus to what you can control? Will you practice gratitude for what you still have? Or will you seek purpose in a small but meaningful way? The choice is yours. And if this resonated with you, if you want to keep learning how to live with wisdom and purpose, consider joining our community. Hit subscribe and let's continue this journey together. Because life isn't over, it's just beginning in a new way. When someone underestimates you, let silence be your power. Mary had spent over 4 decades as a teacher, shaping young minds, guiding her students, and instilling in them a love for learning. She had seen generations of students come and go, each carrying a part of her wisdom into the world. Teaching was more than a profession for her, it was her life's work. But now, in her retirement, something had shifted. Whenever she attended family gatherings or community events, she noticed how younger people often dismissed her thoughts. They spoke over her, assuming that because she was older, she had nothing valuable to contribute. Conversations would drift past her, as if she were invisible. When she did speak, her words were met with polite nods, but rarely deep engagement. At first she felt frustrated. She wanted to remind them of who she was, the woman who had dedicated her life to education, who had guided countless students to success. She felt the urge to prove that she still had wisdom to offer. Then, one evening, as she sat on her porch reading a book, she came across a quote from Marcus Aurelius: "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." She closed the book and thought for a long time. What if I don't need to prove anything? What if I simply live my wisdom instead of trying to explain it? Let your actions speak louder than words. One of the greatest misconceptions we have is that we must constantly defend ourselves against the judgments of others. When someone underestimates us, our instinct is to argue, to prove our worth, to explain why they are wrong. But Stoicism teaches us that true power comes not from convincing others, but from being. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "He who establishes his argument by noise and command shows that his reason is weak." The moment we start justifying ourselves, we place our value in the hands of others. We let their judgment dictate our self-worth. But silence, when used wisely, is powerful. It is a declaration that we do not need validation. It is a quiet confidence that speaks louder than any argument. How to handle being underestimated. If you have ever felt ignored, dismissed, or undervalued, here are 3 Stoic principles to help you rise above it without saying a word. Let go of the need for external validation. The first step in overcoming being underestimated is to recognize that you do not need anyone's approval to be valuable. Try this. The next time someone ignores or dismisses your thoughts, resist the urge to prove yourself. Instead, silently observe. Recognize that their opinion does not change your worth. Example, instead of thinking, "Why won't they listen to me?" shift to, "Their perception of me is their business, not mine." Lead by example, not by explanation. The most powerful response to being underestimated is to let your actions prove your worth over time. Try this. Focus on what you do best. If people don't recognize your wisdom now, they will when they need it. Example, instead of arguing for your value in a conversation, show it in your life. Continue sharing knowledge with those who appreciate it, and let time reveal your impact. 3. Use silence as a tool of strength. There is great power in restraint. When you choose not to respond to ignorance, you shift the balance of power in your favor. Try this. The next time someone belittles you, do not argue. Simply pause, smile, and move on. Let them wonder why you are unaffected. Example, if a younger colleague dismisses your advice, instead of debating, continue excelling in your own way. Over time, they will recognize your value, not because you told them, but because they saw it. Choosing silence over argument. Over the next few months, Mary stopped trying to make people listen. Instead, she focused on living her wisdom. She volunteered at a local literacy program, mentoring adults who wanted to improve their reading skills. She continued learning, reading, and growing. One day, at a family gathering, something surprising happened. One of her nephews, a young entrepreneur, approached her. "Aunt Mary," he said hesitantly, "I remember you used to teach public speaking. I have to give a big presentation next week, and I could really use some advice." Mary smiled. She didn't have to prove herself. Time had done that for her. You do not have to convince anyone of your worth. If you ever feel ignored or underestimated, remember this: you do not need to argue for your value. You are valuable whether others recognize it or not. Your challenge for today. The next time someone dismisses you, resist the urge to prove them wrong. Instead, let your actions quietly show your worth. Be patient. Time will do the rest. And if this message resonated with you, if you believe in finding strength through wisdom and experience, consider subscribing to our community. Here, we don't seek approval. We seek understanding, growth, and inner peace. When you feel lonely, don't wait, reach out. Robert sat alone in his living room, staring at the blank television screen. It had been a long time since his house had been filled with laughter, since his phone had rung with invitations, since he had felt truly connected to someone. His children were grown, caught up in their own lives. His old friends had moved away, some too busy to stay in touch, others lost to time. At first, Robert accepted it as part of life. This is just how aging works, he told himself. But as the months passed, the loneliness grew heavier. He found himself scrolling through old pictures, reminiscing about a time when his presence was constantly required, when his life was filled with conversations, shared meals, and the warmth of companionship. One evening, as he flipped through an old book, he stumbled upon a quote from Epictetus. Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. He paused. Was his loneliness a real problem, or was it something he had convinced himself was beyond his control? What if, instead of waiting for someone to call him, he picked up the phone? What if, instead of assuming people were too busy, he reached out first? That night, Robert made a decision. He would stop waiting and start acting. Loneliness is an illusion of inaction. Loneliness is one of the most painful emotions we can experience, and yet in many cases it is not an unavoidable fate. It is a choice, or rather, the result of not making a choice. Stoicism teaches us that our suffering does not come from external circumstances, but from how we interpret and respond to those circumstances. In the case of loneliness, the problem is not simply being alone, it is what we do with that solitude. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This is an active command. It does not say, wait for others to invite you. It does not say, hope that someone will notice your loneliness. It says, go find people who make you better. How to overcome loneliness? Through action. If you find yourself feeling lonely, disconnected, or isolated, here are 3 Stoic-inspired principles that can help you reclaim your sense of connection. 1. Take initiative. Be the one who reaches out. One of the greatest mistakes we make is assuming that others do not want to hear from us. We convince ourselves that if someone hasn't called, it must mean they don't care. In reality, people are often caught up in their own lives, unaware that we are waiting for them. Try this. Instead of waiting for a call, be the one who makes it. Reach out to an old friend, a family member, or a former colleague. Initiate the connection. Example, instead of thinking, no one has called me in weeks, shift to, who can I reach out to today? 2. Find a community. Connection is built, not given in today's world. It is easier than ever to find a sense of belonging if we actively seek it. Whether it is a local book club, a volunteer group, a fitness class, or an online community, there are countless spaces where people gather. The key is to choose to engage rather than remain isolated. Try this. Join one new group or activity this month. Even if it feels uncomfortable at first, commit to showing up. Example, instead of thinking, I have no one to talk to, shift to, where can I go to meet like-minded people? 3. Transform solitude into strength. Learn to enjoy your own company. While human connection is essential, there is also immense power in learning to be comfortable alone. The Stoics believed that self-sufficiency is one of the greatest forms of strength. True loneliness is not about being physically alone. It is about feeling disconnected from oneself. Try this. Dedicate time each day to an activity you enjoy alone. Reading, writing, meditation, or simply sitting in nature. Example, instead of thinking, I hate being alone, shift to, this is an opportunity to deepen my understanding of myself. From waiting to living, after his decision to take action, Robert began small. He called an old friend just to check in. He started going to a local coffee shop where people gathered to discuss books. At first, it felt unnatural. He had grown so used to isolation that connection felt foreign. But with each step, something incredible happened. He began to look forward to his mornings. He rediscovered the joy of conversation. He found that most people, just like him, were waiting for someone to take the first step. And because he did, his world expanded. One afternoon, while sitting at a park bench watching children play, he realized something profound. He was no longer lonely. Not because his life had drastically changed, but because he had changed. He had stopped seeing loneliness as a permanent state and started seeing it as something he had the power to overcome. Loneliness ends when you choose connection. If you are feeling alone, remember this: you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. The world is still full of people, experiences and relationships waiting to be discovered. Your challenge for today: choose one action from this lesson and apply it immediately. Send a message, make a call, step into a new space, or simply sit with yourself and embrace your own presence. The first step is always the hardest. But once you take it, you'll wonder why you ever waited. And if this message spoke to you, if you believe in building a life of connection and wisdom, consider subscribing to our community. Together, we can transform solitude into strength and isolation into opportunity. When betrayed, walk away in silence. The woman who chose silence. Over revenge, Susan had known Lisa for more than 20 years. They had been inseparable, sharing secrets, celebrating milestones, and supporting each other through life's challenges. Susan had trusted Lisa with everything, believing that their friendship was unshakable. But one day, everything changed. A mutual friend let it slip that Lisa had been speaking behind Susan's back, twisting her words, revealing personal details Susan had shared in confidence. At first, Susan refused to believe it. Not Lisa. She would never do that. But as she looked closer, the signs had always been there, little betrayals she had ignored, excuses she had made for her friend's questionable behavior. Her first instinct was to confront Lisa, to demand an explanation, to force her to admit her wrongdoing. But then, as she sat fuming with anger, she remembered a quote from Epictetus. "You cannot control what others do, but you can control how you respond." What would confronting Lisa really achieve? Would it undo the betrayal? Would it force her to be honest? Or would it simply drag Susan into an unnecessary fight, draining her energy and dignity? That night, Susan made a decision. She wouldn't argue. She wouldn't explain. She wouldn't even say goodbye. She would simply walk away. Betrayal is a test of your inner strength. How to handle betrayal with strength. If you've ever been betrayed by a friend, a partner, or someone you deeply trusted, here are 3 Stoic principles to help you handle it with dignity. 1. Accept that some people will never be who you thought they were. One of the hardest parts of betrayal is letting go of the illusion we had about a person. We grieve not just the betrayal itself, but the version of them we believed in. Try this. Instead of focusing on how they hurt you, shift your perspective. Recognize that their actions reveal who they truly are, not who you thought they were. Example: instead of thinking, "I can't believe they did this to me," shift to, "They have shown me their true character. Now I know who they really are." 2. Do not waste energy explaining their wrongdoing to them. The person who betrayed you already knows what they did. They may justify it, deny it, or twist the story, but deep down, they know. Trying to force them to admit their betrayal only keeps you entangled in their drama. Try this. Instead of demanding an apology or an explanation, choose silence. Let them wonder why you're not reacting. Example, instead of thinking, I need them to understand how much they hurt me, shift to, they are responsible for their actions, and I am responsible for my peace. 3. Walk away with dignity. Let karma do the rest. People who betray others eventually reveal themselves through their own patterns. The more you engage, the more you give them opportunities to justify their behavior. The most powerful thing you can do is step back and let life teach them the lesson. Try this. Make a clean break. No dramatic exits, no angry messages, just distance. Let your absence speak for itself. Example, instead of thinking, I need closure, shift to, the way they treated me is all the closure I need. Choosing peace. Over revenge, for the first few weeks, Susan struggled with her decision. She wanted to reach out, to say something, to make Lisa understand what she had lost. But she resisted. She reminded herself that Lisa's actions were Lisa's, burden to carry, not hers. And then something interesting happened. Without Susan feeding the drama, Lisa's own actions started catching up with her. Other friends began noticing her patterns, questioning her integrity. Over time, Lisa lost the trust of the very people she had tried to impress by betraying Susan. Meanwhile, Susan felt lighter. She had removed toxicity from her life without unnecessary conflict. She had protected her peace. And in doing so, she had won, not by fighting, but by choosing herself over the need for revenge. The strongest response to betrayal is to move on without a word. Betrayal is painful, but it does not define you. Your response to it does. You do not need to confront, explain, or seek revenge. The most powerful thing you can do is walk away in silence and let life handle the rest. Your challenge for today. If someone has betrayed you, resist the urge to engage. Instead, take a step back, focus on yourself, and let time reveal the truth. And if this message resonates with you, if you believe in finding strength through wisdom, consider subscribing to our community. Here we don't chase apologies, we chase inner peace. When you're no longer the center of others' lives, turn that into freedom. For decades, Emma's life revolved around others. As a mother, she poured her heart into raising her children, helping with homework, attending school events, staying up late to comfort them when they were sick. As a wife, she supported her husband's career, making sure the home ran smoothly while he focused on his work. She took care of her aging parents, volunteered in her community, and always put others first. And then, slowly, things changed. Her children grew up and moved away, starting families of their own. Her husband, now retired, spent more time on his hobbies. The calls from her children became less frequent, visits became occasional, and suddenly, Emma found herself in a quiet house wondering, who am I now? At first, she felt abandoned. She had spent her entire life caring for others, so why did it feel like no one needed her anymore? The silence felt overwhelming. She found herself waiting by the phone, hoping for an invitation to be part of their lives again. But life had moved on, and she felt left behind. One day, while cleaning out an old bookshelf, Emma found a journal she had kept in her 20s. Flipping through its pages, she saw dreams she had once had. Learning to paint, traveling to Italy, writing a book. Dreams she had set aside to be a mother, a wife, a caretaker. She came across a quote she had written down years ago from Marcus Aurelius. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Emma sat with those words for a long time. Was she truly being abandoned? Or was this the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to finally live for herself? That night she made a decision. She would stop waiting to be needed and start choosing herself. Embrace change as a new beginning. One of the hardest transitions in life is realizing that you are no longer at the center of others' worlds. But Stoicism teaches us that this is not a loss. It is an opportunity. We suffer when we resist change, when we cling to an identity that no longer serves us. But if we shift our perspective, we realize that every ending is also a beginning. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The time we once gave to others is now ours, and what we do with it is entirely up to us." How to turn this phase of life into freedom. If you've ever felt like Emma, like life has moved on without you, here are 3 Stoic principles to help you reclaim this time as a gift. Redefine your purpose. You are more than the roles you played for many years. Your purpose may have been centered around others, but now it's time to ask, what do I want? Try this. Write down 5 things you have always wanted to do but never made time for. Choose one to start working on today. Example: instead of thinking, "My children don't need me anymore," shift to, "This is my time to do what I have always wanted." 2. Shift from waiting to acting. Create a life you love. The biggest mistake people make in this phase of life is waiting to be invited into others' lives instead of creating their own. Try this. Instead of waiting for a call or visit, plan something for yourself, a new class, a trip, or a personal project. Example: instead of thinking, "I wish someone would invite me somewhere," shift to, "What new experience can I give myself this week?" Find joy in solitude. Learn to enjoy your own company. Solitude is not loneliness, it is freedom. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you become truly independent. Try this. Dedicate time each week to doing something you love alone, reading, hiking, or just sitting with your thoughts. Example: instead of thinking, "I hate being alone," shift to, "This is my time to reconnect with myself." From feeling forgotten to feeling free. Emma started small. She signed up for an art class she had always dreamed of taking. She booked a trip to a city she had never visited. She stopped waiting for invitations and started making plans for herself. At first, it felt strange, but then something shifted. She began to wake up excited for the day. She rediscovered passions she had buried for decades. She found joy in her own company, and something interesting happened. Her children, seeing her happy and fulfilled, started calling more often, not because she was waiting for them, but because they could feel her energy, her excitement for life. You are not forgotten, you are free. If you feel like life has moved on without you, remember this: your time is now. You are not forgotten. You are not irrelevant. You are free to create a new chapter, to explore, to grow, and to finally live for yourself. Your challenge for today: choose one way to invest in yourself. Sign up for a class, plan a trip, or simply enjoy a quiet moment alone. You don't need permission to live fully. You just need to start. And if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to embrace this new chapter with wisdom and purpose, consider subscribing to our community, because here we don't fear change, we welcome it. When someone tries to provoke you, don't react, observe. George had always been a patient man, but his patience was tested every single day by his neighbor, Frank. Frank had an uncanny ability to find ways to provoke George, whether it was making passive-aggressive comments about his lawn, complaining about the noise of his grandchildren playing, or deliberately parking his car too close to George's driveway. At first, George tried reasoning with him, explaining, defending himself. But no matter what he said, Frank always had a way of twisting words, escalating situations, and turning even the smallest disagreement into a battle. One day, after yet another heated argument over something trivial, George sat on his porch, exhausted. That's when he remembered a quote from Marcus Aurelius: "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." He closed his eyes and thought about those words. Every time he argued with Frank, he was allowing himself to be dragged into a game where there were no winners, only wasted energy. What if, instead of reacting, he simply chose not to engage? From that day forward, George decided on a new approach. When Frank complained, he would simply nod. When Frank tried to provoke him, he would smile and say, "I hear you." When Frank made a snide remark, George would let it pass like a breeze through an open window. At first, Frank was frustrated. He kept pushing, kept trying to get a rise out of George. But over time, something remarkable happened. Without a reaction, Frank lost interest. The power he once had over George disappeared. And George, he had found peace simply by refusing to give away his power. Master your mind. Master the situation. There will always be people who try to provoke you. It could be a rude coworker, a toxic family member, or even a stranger online. Their goal is not resolution, it's reaction. The moment you engage, they win. But Stoicism teaches us that we are not obligated to play their game. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The greatest power you have is control over yourself. No one can force you to react. No one can make you angry. The moment you understand this, you become untouchable. How to handle provocation without losing your peace. If you find yourself dealing with someone who constantly provokes you, here are 3 Stoic principles to help you rise above their negativity. 1. Recognize their game and refuse to play. People who provoke others do so because they crave control. They feed on reaction, drama, and emotional responses. When you react, you give them exactly what they want. Try this. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? If the answer is no, simply disengage. Example, instead of thinking I need to defend myself, shift to they are trying to control me through my emotions. I choose not to participate. 2. Respond with calm indifference. Silence is powerful. Not every argument needs a response. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Try this. Instead of arguing, respond with a simple nod, a neutral expression, or silence. Let them sit with their own words. Example, instead of thinking, I need to prove them wrong, shift to, my silence says more than any argument ever could. 3. Control your mind. Your reaction is your choice. No one can make you feel anything without your permission. When you train your mind to remain calm, external negativity loses its grip on you. Try this. Whenever you feel yourself getting frustrated, take a slow breath and remind yourself, I control how I feel, no one else. Example, instead of thinking, they are making me so angry, shift to, I choose to remain calm, their words have no power over me. Freedom through detachment. Over the next few months, George continued his new approach. When Frank tried to provoke him, he remained calm. When Frank sought confrontation, George chose peace. And then one day, something unexpected happened. Frank, who had spent years trying to get under George's skin, actually greeted him with a simple good morning. George had won, not by defeating Frank in an argument, but by rising above the need for one. The strongest person is the one who doesn't react. If someone in your life constantly tries to provoke you, remember this. You are not obligated to react. Your peace is yours to protect. Do not give it away so easily. Your challenge for today: the next time someone tries to get a reaction from you, pause, observe, and choose silence over conflict. You might be surprised at how powerful it feels. And if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to master your mind and find peace in every situation, consider subscribing to our community, because here we don't let others control us, we take control of ourselves. When someone regrets losing you, let them learn their lesson. Olivia had always been the kind of person who put others first. She was the friend who always reached out, the partner who always forgave, the daughter who always made the effort to stay connected. If a relationship felt strained, she was the one who mended it. If someone distanced themselves, she closed the gap. If a loved one hurt her, she found a way to excuse their behavior. For years, she told herself that this was love, that to love someone meant to always be there, to always give another chance. But over time, something began to shift. She started noticing a pattern. The more she chased people, the less they appreciated her. The more she gave, the more they took her for granted. And no matter how much effort she put in, it always seemed one-sided. One day, after yet another friend forgot to return her call, she found herself sitting in silence, feeling exhausted. That's when she came across a quote from Epictetus. "No, man is free who is not master of himself." She read it again, and suddenly it hit her. She had been a prisoner to relationships that no longer valued her. She had spent years trying to convince people to appreciate her presence, when in reality, the people who truly valued her would never have needed convincing. That day, Olivia made a decision. She would stop chasing. She would stop reaching out to those who didn't make an effort. She would stop giving her time and energy to people who only noticed her absence, but never truly appreciated her presence. And then, something incredible happened. Self-worth is proven in absence, not in pleading. Stoicism teaches us that our value is not something we need to prove to others. When someone fails to appreciate you, the worst thing you can do is try harder. Instead, the most powerful response is to step back and let life teach them the lesson. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "If someone values you, they will show it. If they do not, your silence will tell them everything they need to know." This is not about pride. This is about self-respect. The moment you stop forcing relationships, you give others the opportunity to realize what they lost. And if they never do, then they were never meant to stay in your life. How to handle people who only appreciate you after you're gone. If you've ever felt like Olivia, like you were the only one holding certain relationships together, here are 3 Stoic principles to help you move forward with dignity. 1. Stop explaining your worth. Let actions speak. People who truly value you do not need constant reminders of your importance. If they do not see your worth while you are there, they will feel it when you are gone. Try this. Instead of asking someone why they are distant, give them space. See if they return on their own. Example: instead of thinking, "Why don't they make time for me?" shift to, "Let me see if they notice when I stop making the effort." 2. Absence is a test. Let time reveal who truly cares. One of the most painful but powerful things you can do is allow someone to experience life without you. If they value you, they will return. If they don't, they were never meant to. Stay. Try this. The next time you feel unappreciated, take a step back. Observe who notices your absence. Example: instead of thinking, "I need to remind them that I exist," shift to, "If they truly value me, they will reach out. 3. Never give unlimited access to people who take you for granted. Your time, energy, and presence are valuable. Do not waste them on people who only appreciate you once you are gone. Try this. Set boundaries. If someone returns after losing you, do not automatically let them back in. Make them earn their place. Example, instead of thinking, they finally realized my worth, so I should welcome them back. Shift to, now that they are back, let me see if their actions match their words. Finding strength in letting go. In the months that followed, Olivia kept her promise to herself. She stopped chasing. She stopped initiating. She focused on the relationships that felt mutual, on the people who showed up without needing reminders. And then, as expected, the calls started coming. Friends who had disappeared suddenly missed her. A past relationship that had ended due to neglect was suddenly full of apologies. People who had once taken her for granted were now realizing what they had lost. But by then, Olivia had changed. She no longer felt the need to rush back into the arms of those who had only noticed her absence. Instead, she simply observed. Some people she let back in, slowly, cautiously. Others she let go entirely. Because for the first time in her life, she truly understood. Her worth had never depended on their recognition. It had always been hers to own. The right people will never need to lose you to value you. Your challenge for today, if you have been chasing a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a family connection, or a romance, pause, step back, see who reaches out. The people meant for your life will never need to lose you to appreciate you. And if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to reclaim your self-worth, consider subscribing to our community. Because here, we don't beg for love, we live with dignity. The final lesson. Life has a way of teaching us things, sometimes gently, sometimes through painful experiences. But if there's one thing that Stoic philosophy reminds us, it's this. We have the power to choose how we respond. Each of these 7 lessons isn't just something to think about. They are tools. Tools that can help you live with more peace, confidence, and strength. You don't have to change everything overnight. Start small. Maybe today you let go of an argument that isn't worth your energy. Maybe tomorrow you stop chasing people who don't value you. And maybe, just maybe, by next week you'll feel a shift, a quiet kind of strength that comes from within. Because the truth is, happiness isn't about controlling everything around you. It's about mastering yourself. If you found value in these lessons, join this community of like-minded people who believe in learning, growing, and living with purpose. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this journey together. And remember, the strongest person in the room is not the one who argues the loudest, but the one who doesn't need to. See you in the next one.